from the Lucid Fringe. Ravings from the Lucid Fringe. Musings from an unpasteurized life. Improvised on the front line of love and beauty. Welcome, I'm Semeric Yarrow. This week on Ravings from the Lucid Fringe, episode 56, Travelling Rhymes. These are some poetic memoirs, memories, and impressions from my visits to parts of Central Europe, specifically Austria and Slovenia and Istanbul in Turkey, and then my trip through Mexico. All of these are in the thickly mulched words section of my Substack site. In Slovene Österreich, the grasshoppers and cicadas of a lush morning haze. Butterflies with elegant costumes hover and flit, while bees feast on forget-me-nots, thistles, hyacinths and dog-rose, and unfamiliar floral tributes, while we march. Sometimes serenaded by hugely healthy cockerels, though no bears or wolves emerge from the fairy tale firs. Quiet farmers gather hay, shear sheep. Meadows fill with chatter. Into this soft place once came the menace of soldiers' boots, rooting out a forgotten communal history, remembered today in bronze, near the roadside temples to Catholic saints in tasteful pastels, or in books spelling out its carefully farmed revolution, while more recent masks are also far from view. Here we dip a little too into our fathers' travels and loves and footfalls, while the moss upon the trees, unnamed by us, tells stories of passing time and long sleeps. Nettles and spiders prickle at our edges, and we open just a crack or two with the local bio vine into the hearts of three men, and the yarrow grows in abundance, welcoming us before we move on a little further over these upstart, vibrant peaks. Drizhnica. There's a turquoise flow here amidst the crowds of beach. Summer rains that power mossy falls, which slop Slavic style. The precise elegance of church spires, or the quiet satisfaction of sheep in pastoral ruins, is almost too perfect. Solar panels and wood sculptures, and our quiet footsteps treading where men died, whose culture had lost touch with the blue-black butterflies and bees and trees and lizards crawling upon Jesus' sculpted knee. Beyond the tragic mausoleum, she forgives us once more in green. Slovenian bells peal out once more with laughter, and juicy fresco pastels sing a truth behind the words that the calm lakes and busy swallows and angular white peaks recall, till the cuckoos call, and there we find simple words to express our hearts once more in honour of what is. road trip to Ljubljana. So we wind with the waters through gorges, over arches, every turn another step towards grasped for familiarity. Rounded and heroic towers are breathed in minutes. Espressos with water on hilltop islands, in seas of vineyards where old borders have dissolved. Stone walls give way to summer brambles. We wind on to the caves and castles where stories ooze like water through limestone. Soft June tourists pad with earpieces. And still the day rolls on from dirt roads to freeways, to cityscapes as rich as dark craft beer. Plechnik's bridges bound below the pinkest church of all. Cross stations, long forgotten as we avoid the spectacle festival fashionable crowds and taste mushroom steaks and vegan dumplings and cycle across energetic, laid-back, quirky Slovene streets where golf carts pause politely, allowing us to realize our mistake. And the Yugoslav memories in my footsteps are massaged into a little laughing irony. Another week in a day of shared absorbing. Almost ready for the big city return. But first, please, more birdsong and bells. Culture thoughts in an unknown tongue. In these steps forward with the old man, I find myself once more in service to a flowing plan, and grateful too for the peace of green and rain and Slovene warmth. Striding through the town where bad rhymes once trod, and this curiously cultured little place was carved by military men, determined to lift a language to the post-Empire moment, where outsiders could group beyond Germans and Italians, and even beyond Serbo-Croats, beyond obvious cliché or insignificance. And this question then remains, even in a Slovene mass beneath a medieval marvel, even in the faded remnants of pre-COVID cultural festivities, even in the theatre posters of translated classics or local thoughts, even in the hammed-up gypsy jazz in lively Maribor streets. It's taken up the winding roads beneath the shade of lime and beech and silver fir to gentle tastes of fine ice cream, wine, and pauses to hear the chatter of the young. It's taken on walks towards sharp peaks littered with glacier facets and more sculptures in wood, a people full of flower gardens and vegetable knowledge, spared the cynicism of southern wars and, it seems, the turmoil of current refugees. In these reflections I'm left absorbing, keeping spirits up, mind inquiring, longing to bring more of my own gestures to the mix, to a place aiming still for better things. Vienna in July. We climb amidst the throng over the hulks of Habsburgs in a place full of fin de siècle blocks, where Hundertwasser humour is most essential, while jaywalking skateboarders still cause antisocial shock. Italians on cell phones no longer fear the Polizei. In the palaces of paintings, the dedication to perfect flesh is poked quite fun at by a self-deprecating artiste and her exposed Baroque breast. The depth of skills of another age soars in musical museums, from ballet masters, pocket violins, and Ludwig's innocently untidy rage. Art Nouveau operatic costumes feature stenciled Harlequin Siegfrieds, or delicate images of pregnant ceramic truth, hidden away from Rodin's grandiose statements. Rooms full of porcelain, a young woman's room of her own, all as rich as pastry and creamed coffee, with the Schönbrunn summer house as manicured icing. Pillars whose sole purpose is to show how well we do pillars. Cathedral churches overflowing with robes of wealthy piety. Somewhere in this Käse-Spätzle artery-clogging metropole, a little Turkish delight, dusted to rosy perfection, brings the culture clash to an overwrought ending. The trees, the birds, the veggies in the window boxes bray their call for the artifice to be unwound, even as the city summer stink begins the rounds. Winter in Istanbul. I take a step into this impossible favourite imperial city at last, past the infinite harem and the pavilions of inkwells and long-wrapped ceremony. Hear the lost cries of janissaries, encrusted with porcelain and jewelled tapestries, and the slow marking clocks that pulse no more. Unlike the city beyond the palace walls that carves through Byzantine remnants thicker than coffee grinds, bringing salty fish to wrap in dough and veg and smear in fresh yogurt scented subtly, in this place where perfume is a principle, I find my feet amidst the regal cats left to their chosen scooter seats, between the peaceful carpets recalling the pine floor of San Juan. Breathe the bubbles and soften as my pores are scrubbed in a moving tribute to myself I hadn't realized I deserved. In a stuffed brinjal and the sounds of background ouds and minarets that soar still while patriarchs swap ancient titles and dust jackets and prayers for a peace for which I light wax too. Sip slowly across the cobbles that rise and fall on these ocean hills, this sleepy meeting point that offers up chai on elderly trays, carried expertly between gramophones and oil lamps and Turkish LPs with big moustaches and hippie dreams, which reminds me of a messy, creative innocence, to which the felines in my soul call my return. And now to Mexico, starting with the capital, known locally as CDMX. My own tree of life portrayed in gentle glory and filled with heartfelt Mexican colors here in this wobbly city, where the banderas and cathedrals and museums are supersized. There is green peace in the gardens and benches full of lovers. There is memory and pride and gathered hues in tapestries of images and taco smells that flood the streets where cars won't wait but can't speed and cable cars launch themselves over favela slums. Here the warlike Aztecs celebrated with flowers, and the concerts of ceramics and costumes fuse between the piedras of the streets where blood flowed and the mestizo nation birthed, remembered in grand scenes to echo the lost colors of the pyramids, as the mariachi trumpet sounds off-key. A little pulque ferment helps to smooth the metro ride, past educational signs, towards the permaculture gardens of this tropical mega pueblo, where I gulp something fresh, inventive, pulsingly alive, moving with delicacy and sweat across the domed dance floor, and roll towards rabbits cared for by a communist, as Trotsky's agave blooms shine over a haphazard democratic revolution that aches to be remembered. Bookshops and libraries outshine the lakes, but are drowned in turn by salsa classes in parks at dusk, and chihuahuas in jackets and replicas of ruins in a nation that tries very hard here to weld itself into that thing the murals claim, while Frida's eyes shine another kind of fierce loyalty to a path that the shamans may know, and a different kind of child grows, calling out for true discovery. And then down to Puebla de Los Angeles, passing truths in Puebla. Somewhere we have lost a mujer on a bike, a woman standing for something better crushed in the selva darkness. Others, here in Mexico, in Puebla, are shouting for something more, beside the rainbow-coloured zebra crossing, trying to wake the me drivers. And with Lala and Elijah and Diego and Orquídea I discuss at high Latino volume the state of the world, while the organ grinder and his plastic monkey ply the streets, and Cuban trova resounds gently through the colonial courtyard. Still, there are temptations in the local sweetmeats, in the brilliant ceramics, making our stories of the trees of life amidst memories of nuns, with God's watching window, and mole for the viceroy now sold in convenient packets. There's buses, and more buses, across the swarming city where Popo puffs for his shapely love and a barocco goes into overdrive. Classical notes blare across the plaza where armies fought and resisted. In Cholula there are memories of massacres, replaced by Jesuits with libraries and museums of science and scholars and beer. I step towards Comida Corrida and avoid the levels of cobrebocas, drifting into sharing my passions, while the third cross, resisting the Reyes, claims its stake in the game of adherence, and in the place of this proud and ancient centre I find a little more ground. And to the coast, Scorpion Mescal. My churning belly makes it through the pit-stop puestos and mountain switchbacks to the calor of the coast. Amidst palms, rich rhythms sound from a tolerant local's cymbals and our wonderfully wayward bandleader. I taste rich, raw, sweet ceviche and Pacific tenderness for the first time, released for a while into the welcome of this place, where I move past the affluent gay couples in shady cafes, to dance floor contact and reminders of home in the bare fresh bathing and naked conversations and offerings to the fire and pauses to remember love, sweet stretching with the sunrise in a polite East Indian way that leads to beachside Mazunte lounging, deep playful contact after bumpy camioneta rides, and finally a burst into joy and intense connection. Melodies bubbling from our souls beneath the thatch, above the bongos and the tom-toms and the grinding bass, with singing marimba and tasty soulful saxophone, and I cut through enough to earn a scorpion mezcal, and a breezy wild vesper ride back to Zipolite, where inconclusive chess awaits, and a wild driving drumming joining of musical hearts that awakens ecstasy in the limbs of those listening and jiving, and beautiful conversations to complete this synchrony of spirit forces before the waves of the morrow wash me gently back to birth. And then the Sierra Norte, the mountains in the north of Oaxaca state. Pueblo Mágico. 2 taxis take me there, full of locals and Zapoteca dialects, or so I think, but perhaps it was a thicker Spanish. For while the forest thrives here, the language has expired. Not so the music. More brass than I thought possible. A muchacho with a birthday. Community life insisting. What the squirrels and the owls and pumas make of it remains inscrutable. My guide charges on to evitar el frío, but in fact there's a trail runner still in his aging bones. Elsewhere I contend with a fireplace and win, but the main result is smoke and heat. The village dogs give their midnight round of barking at imaginary intruders and passing winds. A fellow traveller invites me into more of a two-step with tales of half-drunken village soccer to see the old year out. By then I'd fully sampled mole negro and pear mezcal from a barrel jar, and walked past Dr. Zeus bromeliads and wild turkey thieves, and deer, and long-tailed flying things, and soft pines and oaks. We pressed to the mole mezcal maker for spiced trout. Fresh from the cascades we'd passed, the tree ferns, the sweet cold waters, and I spoke of my country, so foreign to this far place, a little more settled, feet bare on Madre Tierra, as even the trail runner insists when his surface is scratched. Oaxaca. At first, the throngs beneath the colours and the alebrijes that dazzle, and the crafts in jade and silver, and the fiestas in coloured trajes, and the potent gathering of voices and brass is a mind blast. The mezcal sweeter on the tongue, beside a rich cacao mole or a spicy tlayuda negra. And it takes a soft horchata in prickly pear to calm my mind before I am dazzled again by the gold leaf in Santo Domingo, or the quiet murals of the convent, the cacti and agave mocking any notion of desert, the bees swarming round the dulces, and the view from the terrazza, fresh Oaxacan cheese, quesillo, or the feasting in the Zocalo, or hot chocolate ground and gifted before sweetbread and banana, top-level jazz beside mariachi troops with girls on violins, and the bougainvillea always drooping over the painted walls. The fierce mood of the painters fighting global capital and national greed. The peace of a bookshop or 3. And when I stop indulging and look up, I find there's a quiet pride behind the surface as the crowds start to disperse, and the waha trees wink in the night. And still there's space beyond the open mics and Cheeto chat for a little more reading into bodies beyond the lentes of the soul. Beyond Diaz and Juarez and the other heroes to the colonial memories that wait to be released in Zapoteca hymns and Mixtec anthems, away from the street dog's howl. Somewhere my heart aches with it all, and yet I break through like the chattering birds to something new. And so to the far east of the country, to the forests. Urgent Mayan stories. Double-headed shamans playing at gods with awareness, brazen tombs to take off in, cycles of time codes to crack, colours and memories and baroque squiggles, balls tossed for polarities and blood squeezed for power or love or less decipherable reasons. The fruit-loving forest bats take shelter, watching, like the colibris and the mighty trees. Later, when the game players have retreated once more to humble looms and sometimes petty squabbles, and book-crazed conquistadors have taken control of the story, or so they think, iguanas can stay as silent sentinels, offering ways in, ways back, as the hordes return with cameras that prevent us from pausing and wondering too much. And her power may well rise again in all the trees of life over which the coatis scramble, dancing their furry tunes across the Olmec heads, whose sexual secrets we await to be unfurled by aging clothes designers in comic books. The tricks continue, and the truths need writing, like the urgent waves or the energy swirls of Zapotec dancers. Roots and forest roosts. Delicate as a bee, the colibri darts around the bougainvillea, familiar and strange, sipping ancient nectar next to selva that stretches towards the thebas that bind it. Leaf-carrying ants tread over with determination, and the bats sleepily put up with more eager human disturbance. The waters, softly turquoise, soak over the rocks. Tiny green fish avoid my strokes, while eagles gently soar. Elsewhere, squirrels scurry over Dr. Seuss trees. Epiphytes, far from Cape hanging pots, strut their feathers over the lichen-covered barks of mysterious oaks and pines. A lone vulture circles above the crags. Somewhere surely jaguars crawl, immortalized in every Mayan glyph and wannabe mural. But the agave holds the feathers of the serpent, it seems, who turns to me on crumbled steps in patient iguana form, steps across the grasses on the pyramid's quieter side, and great red trees attract sensual attention, and there is, for a moment, a little more peace. And finally, in Chiapas, in the city of San Cristobal de las Casas. Sojourn in San Cristobal. Passing those passing torches en route to Guadalupe, whose flowers and green marble have me tearful later. But first, cohetes going off, and dogs and colour everywhere. Murals challenging creative limits inspired by cacao. Or maybe the sweet, dangerous taste of Porsche as the music begins and he leads her falteringly as salsa is attempted. The flautist soars away from the street bands in perfect son. In the bookshop I avoid Subcommandant Marcos's thick tomes, but still the Zapatista pride is an inner layer to the cake. Soft and delicate and enticing as the dulces and tortillas made 100 varied ways with brisk love as seen in movies, shown in back rooms far from the sounds of the streets, where rainbow taste exudes, forcing fine artists to exalt, where the sorrow of a passing, too, is given social space, amidst the cobbles and the sense of tequio. Yet, too, there's that serious business of the intellectual that needs a little freedom. As we climb a nearby hill, watch vultures and squirrels, and my teacher thanks the forest. Even with the fumes and noise in the town, there are these moments to find the silence. Even in the Casa na Bolom, where an older sense of care is revealed, and missing pieces might be found. So, thank you for listening to this latest episode in the series, and you can find all of my articles and my recordings at lucidfringe.substack.com, except my music and poetry from the past, which is all available at simrickyarrow, all one word, .bandcamp.com, and the background recordings and sounds that you will have heard are all either from those recordings or they are my own. Please do give this a rating if it's on your podcast app. Please spread the word if you enjoy what you hear, and if you want to give me some feedback or commentary, of course I'm very open to that. Any suggestions for future episodes? Okay, enjoy. See you next time. Ravings from the Lucid Fringe. Ravings from the Lucid Fringe. Musings from an unpasteurized life. Improvised on the front line.